Hey, you doing everyone? Greetings and welcome back to the basement. So what I'd like to do today is I would like to kind of show you the reason why I haven't been making any videos over the last while. And it is because I got myself tangled up with assembly language. I never thought I would like programming in any way, shape or form, but as it turns out, I actually love it. Now what happened was last year, as many of you may know, I kind of started learning bAtari Basic as a means just to see what all this programming stuff is about, more or less, after 40 years of hearing about it. And I managed to write a little game called Bob and the Alien Fireflies, and the game is fun to play, and it's available on the Atari 2600. But I decided what I would do was I would convert it over to the Coco Color Computer 2. So as I knew a little bit about Basic from using bAtari Basic, I figured I would try to learn a little bit of Color Computer Basic in order to convert my game. So I started doing a few little tests. Now what you see here is a little Bob sprite, and he's 8 pixels by 8 pixels on a screen that's the highest resolution the Coco 2 can do, 256 by 128 pixels. And really, I couldn't use this mode for my game because there's only 2 colors available to you using it. You've got green and you've got black, but still, as a test, it wasn't too bad. So I said, that looks fairly reasonable. I was kind of impressed by it. So I figured maybe the next thing to do is to see how Bob would move on the screen. Would he flick an awful lot, or would it kind of be smooth enough? So I wrote a little program to move him across the screen. Now, when I ran that little program, what you can see here is a very, very flickery Bob, kind of shimmying his way across the screen. So I knew that was just not going to fly at all for my game. But it didn't bother me too much. I said, look, the resolution is quite high, so maybe that's the reason it's having so much trouble. It's dealing with all these pixels on screen. So I decided to try the same thing in the lowest resolution to see what that would give me. So what we're looking at here is an 8 by 8 Bob sitting on a 64 by 64 pixel semi-mode graphics screen. Now this is the lowest resolution that the Coco 2 can do, and Bob is pretty much there and he's huge. So if I were to use that mode, Bob would have to be shrunk down a bit. So you'd be looking at like a 4 pixel by 4 pixel sprite in order for him to have enough room on the screen to move around to play the game some way properly. But in order to see what way he moved, I tried programming in a kind of a Dungeons of Daggerat style control system. So what we do is we press a key and we press enter to go up and down and right and left. But it gave me an idea, and as you can see, when he moves there, he's still flickering an awful lot. So I figured that wasn't going to fly at all. So really, the only way that Bob and the Alien Fireflies could ever make its way across to the Color Computer 2 was by using a little bit of machine language. So I decided maybe what I'd do was I would write the most part in Basic and then any of the processor intensive parts in machine language if I could ever figure that out. But it occurred to me that in this game, kind of everything is processor intensive. We're going to be moving Bob around. We're going to have 2 kind of laser beams that go left and right across the screen, and we're going to have a little firefly kind of flicking around and randomly placed. So the whole thing would just be one big gigantic flicker fest. So really, machine language was the only way to go. So I decided I wouldn't bother. I would put the whole thing to bed, and I left it for maybe about a month or so. Right through the month of September, I said, nah, won't bother with that. Move on to something else. And in talking to Mr. Dave 6309, who has actually been a huge help as regards this, he hasn't written any code for me, but he's given me, kind of guided me, you know, as I'm going along. He said, well, why don't you try this, or this? And generally his advice has kind of saved me time, I think, in what I've been doing. But he, in 1 or 2 conversations that we had, kind of put a little nugget in my head, why not? Why not try it anyway type thing? So what I did was, I had a look on YouTube and I found a series about learning 6809 machine code for the Color Computer 2. Now the series is in 12 parts and it spans over about 10 to 12 hours, I think, in all. You can easily watch it inside of a week or two. But it's by Steve Bjork, who in his own right was a fantastic programmer. And he did all kinds of games and applications for many, many computers. But for the Coco 2 and 3, he is well known for many of the games that he did. So this course I watched in its entirety. And to be honest, I only understood maybe about 20% of it. But it was enough to get my foot in the door and to kind of get a foothold about what assembly actually is and how you would go about using it. And then using the assembly language graphics for the TRS-80 color computer book, which is a book about assembly that's written for beginners, but it focuses on games. So drawing sprites, placing them on screen, moving them around with the joystick, and sticking in sound and stuff like that. Does pretty much everything but collision detection. Using that book as well, I kind of got enough knowledge together that I could start kind of writing my own little assembly language programs. But the very first thing I wanted to do, the very first thing, was that I could work with code that I could kind of predict the results. So I figured the best thing to do is draw a line on screen. And that way I can make it go vertical, I can make it go horizontal, or I can increase or decrease its length and kind of see that I'm understanding what I'm doing and maybe, able to control the program a little bit. So I had a look on Google and I found a blog by Glenn Hewitt where he gave multiple different bits of code to draw lines in assembly for the color computers. So very efficient code that was very long kind of thing, and then inefficient code that was short. So I picked the shortest one and I kind of rolled with that. So really, that is how I started learning. And these resources are excellent. If you think you'd like to start learning assembly, it really is a great place to start with that. With the playlist, and also with that little book alone is fantastic. But let me show you what I've managed to do over the course of, I suppose, since October up until now. Okay, so what we have here is we have my little machine language implementation of Bob and the alien fireflies. Bob is moving around with the joystick, as he should, and he's going fairly smooth actually. I'm kind of happy with the way he turned out. But as you can see, I don't really have collision detection implemented just yet. When the laser beams touch him, it doesn't do him any harm. But I have tried to make it as like the Atari version as I could. So he's kind of blocked in on the left and the right hand side of the screen, but when he goes off the bottom of the screen, he'll come back on top, and when he goes off the top, he comes back on the bottom. You'll see as well that Bob is animated. His little legs move when he moves in whichever direction. And I say that collision detection isn't fully implemented yet. It's not, but when he touches a firefly, I've got collision detection going on that. So my collision detection little way of working around is working. Finally, and I have to thank Mr. Dave 6309 for that. I wasted about 3 weeks trying to do collision detection my way, and Dave gave me 2 pointers of how you could go about doing it, and in the space of a week and a half, from what he told me, I have collision detection pretty much working, and I'm very close to having it working on the 2 little laser beams as well. But just getting back to it, the very first thing, as you'll remember, I started with was a line. Well, that worked out well for me because after about 6 weeks of just working on lines, I managed to get a line going from the left to the right hand side of the screen. And then about a week later, I had a little opening in it and I had it moving down the screen. And that was pretty much my starting point. After I had the first laser beam working more or less the way I wanted it to, all I had to do was copy and paste the code and change a few values around to have a second one of a different color going the other way across the screen. And at that point then, I decided I would implement my little fireflies. Now again, Mr. Dave, he gave me the address of a routine in ROM that is more or less a random number generator. And he said, really what you should do is call on that and then use it to place whatever the heck you want on screen. So I started with a little dot on screen and I had it changing colors inside of a couple of days. And I got him kind of moving around the way I wanted him to, more or less. And once I had that done, I decided to put a little form to him and animate him as well. So I learned kind of all about drawing sprites and animating sprites through using the Firefly. And then when it came to Bob, well, animating him and drawing him was kind of a lot easier too. But again, Mr. Dave kind of came to the rescue on Bob, because I said to him, look, I've got Bob here, and when he moves, he's moving a whole byte at a time. So Bob really only had 32 positions across the screen instead of 128 as he moved the way I had him implemented. And what I was doing was I was trying to figure out code that would move him through bytes and really complicated stuff. And Dave said to me, look, why don't you just do it this way? Which actually was the easiest and best feckin' way of doing it. So that's what I did. And I guess what I'm trying to say is lean on people who know what they're talking about and know what you're doing. Because when it came to collision detection, I wasted so much time trying to do it my way. And when I was given one or two little pointers, in the space of no time at all, I have this little bit of collision detection here working with the Firefly. And I'm very, very close to having collision detection working with the laser beams as well. But yeah, let me just mention one fantastic resource as well. Coco Retro. The guy has a YouTube channel. I don't know what your name is, but your channel has been a fantastic source for me. Number one, the first video I watched that the guy put up was to do with setting up your development environment on your PC, because what I had been using was the assembly language graphics for the TRS-80 color computer book. That recommended that you use the SDS-80C software development system, which was really old school way of editing, compiling, and doing all your work on the Coco itself. Cartridge that's stuck in the side. You did all the typing in, all the compiling, all the everything that way. All your work had to be saved out to cassette, so I was using mobile phone to save out work. And then, I have a huge appreciation for people who did this back in the 80s. Me, I change a thing on my PC, it's compiled, and I'm trying it in seconds. Back in the day, it took 5 minutes to save it. It took a bit of time to compile it, and then you had to load it back in, and oh man, I can only imagine. But what I started doing was I was using that cartridge system with XROAR, and I was saving out kind of snapshots. Was the easiest way to use it, but it was nothing in comparison to what Coco Retro was kind of set up as his development environment, and I mirrored what he was doing, and I was coding, and I was kind of productive in no time thanks to that. And also he had a fantastic video on screen modes and how to set screen modes in assembly language. So what I will say to you is I'm going to put links to the 4 main things that helped me as I was kind of getting from not knowing anything about assembly up to kind of having Bob doing what Bob's doing there. But that is the reason why I haven't been making any videos over the last while. That's pretty much it. I've been kind of engrossed in this. But what I will say is this version, when it's finished, I'm hoping will be a lot better than the Atari 2600 version. Already the way the scoring system is going to work is we're going to have a little kind of jar of bugs down the bottom of the screen, and you need to get 12 bugs to move on to the next level. So depending on what color the bug or the firefly that you pick up is, it'll put a kind of color bar in your jar. So you'll have 3 bars by 4 bars kind of height type thing, and it'll work a bit like Tetris. If you have 3 bars of the same color, you get a bonus. And yeah, that'll be pretty much that. But this is it's kind of what I'm using as a platform to learn assembly language, and well, I hope people will play it when it's ready. But yeah, I'll try and make another few videos. What I'm going to do is once I get collision detection implemented on this properly and I'm happy with it, hopefully by the end of this week, I'll finish up that bAtari basic series that I was working on, because really there's only 1 episode left in it, and I'll go through the bit of code that I wrote for that game, and that'll be it. That'll be it, finished. So look, thanks for sticking with me up until now. This has been me and Bob. We'll talk to you in the next episode fairly soon. So Until then, have a great weekend. Enjoy yourselves. Bye bye.